This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Insightful Accountants Be Insightful membership program. Get 9 expert-led training tracks, over 30 CPE hours a year, hands-on workshops, and year-round premium content to grow your skills and your practice. Learn more at blog.insightfulaccountant.com. Just click the premium member content button.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Accounting Insiders Podcast. My name is Gary DeHart. I'm the host of the Accounting Insiders Podcast and the publisher of Insightful Accountant. My guest today is Warren Brown. Warren is the CPO, product officer, I think is what that is.
You got it, yeah. Chief Product Officer, that's right.
How about that? I read your LinkedIn profile. And COO of Settle. And we're going to get into what Settle is. But so Warren, he's been building software and financial products to help founders, CFOs, and operators streamline the businesses for 20 years. He's been at Settle for 2 years. Sorry, I'm having to read this because I just can't memorize it all. And when Settle's been serving the e-commerce and CPG accountants, I'm going to have to ask you what CPG accountants is. What is that?
Yeah, you bet. So consumer packaged goods. I mean, it's
there we go.
Some folks think of e-commerce as just D2C, like just your Shopify site or Amazon. So many brands now are selling in wholesale or retail channels as well as online. And so CPG is kind of the broader category.
Okay, great. That was a new term for me.
Yeah.
Accountants and then their clients for almost 7 years, helped thousands of brands, lending over $3 billion since Settle started. And was Settle started 7 years ago?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. All right. Just making sure I got it because there was 20 years and that was you, and then Settle for 7. Got it.
Lots of years.
It's been in business 7 years. Perfect. All right. So thank you so much for being here. And we've got multiple things we're talking about, but high level, why don't you set the stage for us and just give us what is Settle?
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. So let me give you what is Settle for e-commerce or omni-channel brands, and then also what is Settle for the accountants and the bookkeepers that serve those inventory-based businesses.
Perfect.
So I think for brands, we really help them solve 2 core problems. As a brand, I'm trying to grow and scale, and I need capital to grow and scale. And we Settle are one of the leading non-bank financing providers to inventory-based businesses like e-commerce brands. We lend them the money they need to buy their inventory, pay for their marketing, and invest in growth. The second thing we do for those brands is as they scale, as they get beyond just launching their first product, they add channels, they add more products, they add kits and bundles, they start to have multiple warehouses maybe. Running the back office of the business gets complex.
Mm-hmm.
And the spreadsheets that they use to start off on initially start to fall apart or take too much time to maintain. And we make software that allows them to combine all of their procurement, inventory, and payments activity together in one platform. And so for a brand, it's the difference between knowing their landed costs, like by pulling up an interface, or spending 2 days trying to update a bunch of spreadsheets to get the answer.
And who doesn't want to spend 2 days with spreadsheets?
I mean, right. And that's actually, but that's the connectivity to the accountant and the bookkeeper as well, right? Is if you're an accountant or a bookkeeper for an inventory-based business, end of month is always it's always busy and complicated for every client, but especially for inventory-based businesses. The revenue, COGS, and inventory valuation kind of reconciliation process is very challenging at best, because there are so many different sources of data that all need to be pulled together, and they aren't linked. They typically aren't in the same system. And so one of the things that Settle does to help accountants and bookkeepers be more efficient in servicing their inventory-based clients is, we do things like pull all of the orders and all of the cost data together and give them their landed costs per SKU without having to do a lot of manual work to get there.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, what does that translate to? It translates into faster closes and less time spent chasing down, trying to reconcile.
Right, which is money. right?
It's money. That's right.
Yeah,
We all know that most of these are fixed price, fixed monthly price contracts, and so the number of hours you have to put in, if you can cut that down or keep that, under control, that's how you make money as an
so
account.
so on that side, on the software side of the business, who is your direct customer then? Is it the accounting professional serving inventory clients, or is it the actual inventory client?
Great question. So we typically sell to the inventory-based business, the brand.
Okay.
They will use our software and they will be using it to, issue their POs, to track their inventory, to pay their bills. Most commonly, their bookkeeper will have a login as well, and that bookkeeper will be actively logged in to settle,
Yeah.
maybe doing the bill pay process. We're starting to see, I think we'll talk more about this later. We're starting to see some of the kind of leading practices say, these brands all have the same problems. They don't want to hire a full-time body for 60, 70 grand a year to run the inventory operations. And when they do, that person doesn't do it very well. And so we're seeing this kind of opportunity to outsource not just the bookkeeping side of it, but the actual
Yeah.
operation side of it, and do that efficiently and increase revenue per client, which is kind of an
Okay.
interesting opportunity.
Yeah, that's a very interesting opportunity. So, which leads into one of the questions, and that is typically, or not typically, but in many cases, a lot of firms don't really want to get into inventory clients. And I think it's for a lot of the reasons that you were just saying, right? It's a lot of work. There's a lot of data coming from a lot of different points. And if it's not automated, well, I'm going to spend hours, days, weeks trying to figure this out, depending on the size of the client, right? And so and how is that fixed? I mean, you have obviously bringing software to the table is part of it. What do you see taking place currently?
Yeah. I mean, so I think the challenge is just as you described, right? Is that at the end of the day, you're still producing the same statements for an inventory-based business as you are for a services business or
Mhm.
a restaurant or whatever it might be. But the added complication is, the amount of different places that revenue is coming in from, the amount of different channels. So you've got your Shopify, you got your Amazon, then you've got your wholesale typically, and then figuring out costing, and getting
Mhm.
costing right when you're buying inventory and you've got multiple payments, upfront to the supplier. Then you've also got the landing costs, and so the freight and the duties, especially the tariffs in this day and age.
Yeah.
That, all of that, is necessary just to get three lines right on the income statement and balance sheet. Revenue, COGS, and value of the largest asset, inventory. And if you don't have a good SOP for it, and you don't, then you'll be underwater, right?
Yeah.
We see folks able to run a strong SOP and a strong practice with spreadsheets and the like. But when we get brands using Settle software to run their operations, we're helping the brand save. We had, one brand tell us they're saving 10 to 20 hours a month of their time. And then that turns into a similar kind of time savings, maybe not quite as much, but for the accountant and the bookkeeper as well.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this. I'm going to kind of bounce back to the early part on the working capital side. Um, does a company need to be a Settle software client to be a working capital client?
Great question. No. So, and the reverse is also true. So we meet folks where they are. If your
Okay.
pressing need right now is I need capital to grow my business, let's talk to you about capital and let's solve your capital problem. If your pressing need right now is my spreadsheets are broken and I don't trust my income statement about my balance sheet, let's talk to you about software and let's solve your problem there. I'd say about a third, a third, a third of our clients. So a third are working capital only today, a
Okay.
third are software only today, and a third are, do both. And so
Okay.
we like all three.
And then are most of those connected to an outside accounting professional?
I'd say most of them are. We
Yeah.
do get at the very early stage. We do get folks come in that haven't yet decided on an outside professional, an accountant or a
Okay.
bookkeeper. And we actually, for our partners who are in our partner program, we actively try and refer those opportunities out and try and be a lead gen source for our partners.
Okay, great. Since you mentioned partner program, what does that look like?
Yeah, yeah. So we love partnering with accountants and bookkeepers, especially folks who specialize in the space, but even folks who've got, 4 or 5 inventory-based clients and or maybe you're wanting to grow that practice. Um, the way it works is super simple. It's a simple contract. Um, it gets the accountant and their clients, significant discounts on the software. I mean, we have a free entry level version of the software that you can't discount more than free,
Right.
but for the paid plans, accountants get access to those plans at effectively 50% of retail. And then the accountant can decide, do they want to keep some of that, on their side, or do they want to pass that on as a benefit to their client? We're one of the more affordable software packages in the space. But then I think the biggest thing from a partnership is we also, some firms like to do this and some firms don't, and we support both. But if they're open to kind of rev share opportunities, especially on the working capital side, for partners who refer us working capital deals, they can earn some pretty meaningful, monthly rev share income.
Okay.
And that's again, we're all in this to build great businesses that are
Right.
profitable and continue to grow. And so we like being able to help our partners with some high margin revenue.
Sure. That's fantastic. So we talked about, the kind of the challenges of the space a little bit, opportunities in the space, kind of the partner program, how it supports, can support, the accounting pro. If what are the how am I trying to say this? So basically, somebody listens to this conversation and thinks, yeah, you know what? I've had this customer. I've kind of been talking to them, or a prospect, kind of been talking to them. What would be kind of the three tips that you'd look for in trying to build out an inventory based practice?
Tips in terms of like things that they should be doing in order to
Yes.
build a great practice. I get you. Yeah,
Yep.
for
Yep.
sure. So, I mean, if you're trying to build an accounting or bookkeeping practice serving e-commerce brands, Shopify sellers, Amazon sellers, there's a bunch of different names for it, but any of those spaces, I think first and foremost, um, deciding kind of are you going after the small end of the market or the kind of the medium to high end of the market?
Okay.
Obviously, more volume at the small end, but um, you know, probably a lot less, probably less revenue per customer opportunity at the
Hmm.
small end. Um, and at the higher end, you tend to see folks who also maybe have a um, fractional CFO practice alongside the accounting and the bookkeeping because
Okay.
that tends to be an ask there as well. So I think the strategy and the tools that you need to be successful are very different depending on which of those two channels you want to pick. And so
Yeah.
I'd be thoughtful there. And then I think it's thinking about your tool stack for efficiency, right?
Hmm.
We have a partner that we love working with, A2X, and they've spent, gosh, I think it's 15, 20 years. I don't remember exactly, but they've been at it for quite a while, maybe not 20 years, but 10. Um,
Hmm.
at automating revenue reconciliation for e-commerce brands, right? And so
Okay.
if you take what are the hard jobs in closing the books for an e-commerce seller, revenue reconciliation, taking all those Shopify payouts and Amazon payouts and accurately adjusting for the returns, accurately adjusting for the card processing fees, getting the month end just right. That's a lot of work. And
Yeah.
A2X automates that. And so we're integrated to them, but they do a great job of automating that. And then it's deciding on what tools are you going to use for automating COGS and calculation of inventory valuation. And that's where we see Settle fitting in is
Okay.
but you need to have a plan for those three line items and how you're going to do those jobs efficiently.
And so maybe start small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that's like, listen, if you're dealing mostly with a brand that's only on Shopify, right? So they don't have multiple sales channels. and they don't have a crazy number of products, so they're not issuing a crazy number of purchase orders every month,
Mhm.
then that's going to be a lot easier to to get to done than someone who's selling in 5 different channels and selling 100 different products and et cetera, et cetera. And
Okay. And so somebody listens to this conversation and they go, "Hey, I've got, 5 inventory clients. How would they, how would I identify which client would be a good fit for Saddle and which would not be?" And I'm thinking
yeah,
more on the software side. It's not, if they have inventory, they probably and need working capital, they're a good fit for that. But how do I identify on the software side who's a good fit or not?
yeah. So we look at it from the software side as, we actually built the free version of our software. So think of it as like free inventory management software and free bill pay software combined together into one.
Okay.
And we built that in order to be relevant for really early stage brands. And so maybe if you're as an accountant or bookkeeper dealing with a client who's pre-revenue, that's probably a little too early, but although we'd welcome the conversation. But if they're doing 10, 20K a month of revenue, that's a great time to be talking, to be, and because their business is probably relatively simple, and
Sure.
getting started in a system when your business is relatively simple and then complexifying your business inside a system is so much easier than allowing the business to become complex in spreadsheets and then
Yeah.
having to migrate out of the spreadsheets into a system. Now, we do have completely free kind of white glove onboarding service as part of
All
Settle.
right.
So, so if they do have one of those complicated brands that are doing $3 to $5 million and have crazy number of channels and crazy number of products, we hold their hand all the way in to make sure they get set up right. But if they, I'd say so from very small to, if you're doing 30 to $50 million of revenue, those are great fits for us.
Okay.
And it tends to be either they're frustrated because they're paying too much for bill pay, like they're paying their bills out of their bank and paying $40 a wire and ridiculous FX fees. It's like, well, let's make those costs go away, right? Or the accountant or the bookkeeper is saying, I'm spending 10 hours a month just trying to match your POs and your invoices to calculate your costs. You can't, I can't afford to keep charging you what I'm charging you and
Right.
spending that kind of time on this. We need to do something differently.
Okay.
And those are the good signals.
Okay, great. And so then what does that conversation look like? Okay, I've identified, client number one I'm going to start with. Um, what's that? Let's say it's a small to medium, not a
Yeah, yeah,
huge with
sure.
all these problems. Um, what does that look like from initial conversation with Settle to implementation?
Yeah. So
And
what
I
that would typically,
and actually caveat, all clients will be different, right? And
yeah.
everybody's going to have their own problems and the things
I'm
that you
glad
have to
you
deal with,
I'm,
but
I'm glad you
generally
brought that.
speaking,
I'm glad you
yeah,
brought that up first because that probably would have been the first words out of my mouth too. But
yeah,
from a flow standpoint, what we'll typically do is we'll get on a call with the accountant, the bookkeeper, and the client, and give them a demo walkthrough of the system, and just make sure they understand, what the system is, how it works, what problems it's designed to solve. We have a few kind of diagnostic questions just to kind of make sure, is there anything that the client is doing that, that's going to require, something custom or, or that might be a little bit different. Um, and so we go through that, and then client says, "Yep, let's go." We will assign them an onboarding specialist, a solutions architect, who will just make sure they have a full understanding, and then it's a pretty simple process for small to medium. It's usually it starts with connect your Shopify, and we pull in all your warehouse locations and all of your SKUs from there, and then it's connect your other sales channels, and we do some matching there. And so then there's just basically we try and get the catalog in the system correct and linked to everything,
okay,
and then we're connecting your QBO um, or your NetSuite, if that's what you're using, so that we can automate those journal entries. And then we're uploading initial costs and initial inventory levels if they're not if they're doing self-fulfillment. If they're working with a 3PL, we're connected to 70 of the top warehouse management systems, and so we can automatically bring in inventory levels pretty easily.
Okay.
Um, so the process really goes walk around the table and say, let's connect to all your systems. Let's connect to your sales channels. Let's connect to your inventory systems. Let's connect to your accounting system. Um, and then let's get started. And usually it'll be, let's issue your first PO. Like let's order some inventory together, right? And make sure that goes smooth. Let's pay your first bill and let's make sure that goes smoothly. Let's check your inventory balances. And then we'll get to the end of the first month and we'll say, all right, let's walk through closing the books and let's show you the end of month inventory report that sets you up for that close. And
Okay.
as you say, there are always some unique elements that happen in that process, but that's basically the flow.
Okay. And when you say let's walk through, is that you're holding hands as we go through this process?
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. What we found is that, I mean, we have a great onboarding flow and the software's like, we regularly get compliments. The software's easy to understand and great user interface. And we just found that it's just better for everybody if you've got someone
Yeah.
holding your hand. Yeah.
You know the nuts and bolts of it, right, in the
That's
back
right.
end, and
That's
no
right.
guessing. And so well, actually onto something you said. You mentioned QBO and NetSuite. Is that the
Yeah.
two that you're connected with at
Those
this
are the two
time?
we're connected with today. We do get a growing number of requests for zero, and that's on the roadmap. But
Okay.
that's and to be clear, if you are a working capital customer and on zero, we can still lend to you. We just
Okay.
can't automate the right back to zero today for the software.
Okay. What's the move? What takes me from being on the free platform to a paid platform?
Great question. So we have some pretty sizable businesses still on the free, but what tends to be the driver is complexity in their business.
Okay.
And complexity, either that they are using a 3PL and they want that real-time integration to the 3PL, or they're connecting to many different sales channels, and that drives the
Okay.
upgrade.
So
What we do, we don't have any, like a lot of our competitors, we don't have any eh, pricing increments on number of SKUs or number of orders or number of users. We
mhm,
think you should want to get everybody in your business onto Settle because that's going to make you more efficient. And so we don't
right.
we don't penalize you for adding users.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Is there anything that we haven't covered? I think, overall, we were talking about accounting for inventory and building scalable, profitable, e-commerce practice, which I think we've covered that pretty well.
Yeah.
Anything that we missed?
Let me think. I guess what I would say is we've come back to this point of landed costs and margins,
Yeah.
but I guess just from a market standpoint, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, you could be building an e-commerce brand and just focused on revenue and just focused on customer acquisition and you could grow and you could kind of grow your way through it. But I'd
Right.
say market wise right now, brands are just laser focused on I need to manage profitability, like very carefully. I need to get to profitability quickly. And that's creating greater demand on accurate costs, accurate margins. And so it's like I think it raises the bar for the accountant and the bookkeeper in terms of delivering the results because brands are really paying attention to this now.
Mhm.
But I think it also, it makes the accountant and the bookkeeper that much more of an essential partner. Like rather than just saying, "Hey, this is something I have to do to raise money or whatever else." It's like, no, this is like the information that's coming out here is the lifeblood of my business. And so I think it makes the accountant and bookkeeper even more of a partner than maybe they traditionally have been. And so I think that's a
Right.
really good thing.
Yeah. And we're not an inventory-based business, but as a small business, that is what, I need and want from my accountant, right? As a partner who's kind of lockstep with me, even better yet, lockstep, but looking ahead of me going, hey, did you know X, Y, and
This
Z,
this is
whatever
what's
it is.
coming. Yes,
Yeah, this is what's
exactly.
coming down the road at us. Let's be prepared for it. Um, I'm going to finish, even though most of our conversation has been about software. I'm going to go back to the working capital
Yeah, of
side
course.
because it seems that that's something for anybody that might be listening to this that has inventory clients. At some point, they're going to need money,
That's
right?
pretty
Whether
typical.
it's traditional bank or non-traditional bank. Um, what does that process look like?
Yeah, yeah, you bet. So we try and combine the best of both worlds. So
Okay.
uh, super fast, easy application process. So brands apply in minutes, it's 10, 15 minutes, and they're connecting their accounting, connecting their bank, providing us a little bit of information on the business. And we then are that allows us to run a pretty deep underwrite on the financials of the business and come back in usually about 48 hours with an offer. And so
Okay.
one of the things we hear from a lot of both accountants, but then also the brands is they don't want to waste a lot of time figuring out whether they can use they can access capital here, right? They want to spend the time running the business. So we try and keep that super fast and easy. And the way Settle's working capital works is you get approved for an amount. Let's say it's $1 million. And you can then as you have bills to pay, inventory, marketing, packaging, whatever it might be, in Settle's bill pay, you go in and pay that bill and you say, instead of pay from my bank account, you say, have Settle pay this bill. And
Okay.
we send the money to your vendor. And then you choose how long you want to extend that payment back to us. So you might say, this one I want to push out for 90 days. This one I want to push out for 180 days. This one for 210 days. So you get the flexibility to align your repayment with your cash flow,
Okay.
and an ability to adjust that if your cash flow changes after you've made that decision. And pricing is super simple. It's a simple interest on the balance that you owe. And so people will often look in this space at things like Shopify Capital or Wayflyer or all these merchant cash advance providers. And they're structured in a way where if you prepay, if you pay early, your effective cost of funds can kind of shoot through the roof, 30, 50,
Okay.
30, 50%.
Okay.
Um, we're not structured that way. We're structured, it's a simple interest rate. If you pay early, then you're paying less on the balance that you owe.
Okay.
Um, and I think the other thing to highlight is we see a lot of brands like they'll look at bank financing or they'll look at asset-based lender financing, which are two options in the space. Where they struggle with those is that you have to have the inventory or the accounts receivable on your balance sheet before you can borrow.
Mm.
And it's kind of a
It's
it's
like,
kind of a wait a
this doesn't
second,
help me, right? It's
that's
like,
backwards, right? Is I
yeah,
need the
I need the
money
money to get
in
that
order to
here,
start this
right? Yeah.
inventory purchase.
Yeah.
And again, with Settle, we built the product
Yeah.
for e-commerce brands so they can actually use it to fund that deposit.
Right. Yeah. Gotta love the banks, right?
They'll give you the money
Yeah.
when you don't need it and won't give it to you
We're
when you need it.
exactly. We're happy to help you as long as you don't really need the money.
Exactly.
So one thing you did say, and I want to just clarify one thing, because you said in your example, you said $1 million. Well, what if my clients are on the smaller side? I mean, is there a number
Great.
that
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. So we do deals from 20K to 15 million. So
okay,
if you
great.
got a small client, we love them because what we've seen, and that's been one of the things I love about this job is we start with a lot of small brands. We start with a 20K, 50K line, or 20K, 50K loan, and but then we watch them grow,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we pulled some stats about a year ago and said, like, what's the average revenue growth of brands who start working capital with us from the day they start to 12 months later? And it's over 300% revenue growth.
Wow.
Now, we're not here to take credit for that. These are great founders who are running great businesses, who are hustling
Mhm.
and doing all the good work. But when you have the capital to grow, it helps, right?
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so fun. That's the fun of this job is that we get to work with hustling entrepreneurs on the brand side, and then hustling entrepreneurs on the accountant bookkeeper side too. And we get to
Yeah.
help them grow in both cases, we get to help them grow their businesses.
That's great. All right. So how do they reach you? We're going to wrap up with that.
Yeah, you bet. So You can find out everything you need to know on settle.com for sure. If you want to reach out to me, I am on LinkedIn, Warren Brown. You can also reach out to Melissa Cafagna, who heads up our accounting partnerships channel. She's also all over LinkedIn, and would love to chat with you. If you're thinking about adding an inventory-based practice, happy to share thoughts. If you've got some inventory-based clients, boy, we'd love to help make your process and their process more efficient.
That sounds very good. All right. Well, you heard it there. Warren, thank you so much. Appreciate the time and the conversation. I usually on the front end say the date. It is November the 3rd, 2025. And I usually say that just so that if we said something in this conversation,
Great idea.
6 months from now, might not be relevant. Just know that it was relevant on November the 3rd,
Exactly.
2025 and factual. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time. And I'm sure we'll talk to you very soon.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Warren.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Are you an accounting or tax professional who wants to stay ahead without spending a dime? Join thousands who trust insightful accountant and tax practice news to keep them informed and empowered. Get expert updates on QuickBooks, Xero, tax planning strategies, and workflow tips delivered straight to your inbox. Whether you're a solo bookkeeper, firm leader, or tax advisor, these newsletters are your shortcut to what's next in the profession. They're free, practical, and built for people like you. Visit insightfulaccountant.com and hit subscribe to start your smarter workflow today for free.